What's your name?
Morrowind time. Today we're joining Misplaced. Misplaced is going to be a very powerful mage, and we are going to join her in her endeavors to become the Master of the Fighters Guild. Yes, you heard me right. This mage is going to become the Master of the Fighters Guild. You've heard the jokes the other way around, how easy it is in Oblivion and in Skyrim to just become the Master of the Mages Guild with very little magical expertise, so why don't we do it the opposite way in Morrowind? I'm going to be taking the apprentice rather than the atronach just to simplify things a little bit and make myself even weaker against magic. The last Morrowind video I made, somebody pointed out that the key for the Imperial Warehouse can be found right here in this office, so I pick it up this time. Now, some limitations that I'm giving myself. I'm a mage, I don't want to wear any armor, and I don't want to use any weapons. There's one exception, I can use a shield if I want to, because if you're using hand-to-hand or you're using your spell, you can't actually block with your shield. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and just do a few things around Saedianine, make a few dollars before I find a place to live. That being Gorak Manor in Caldera. I'll have access to Creeper and be able to make money for training. This is how a lot of fights in the early game are going to go. If I get unlucky and I get hit a couple too many times, I am going to die. The chart here claims that in order to become the Master of the Fighters Guild, you need 35 in both your strength and your endurance, and you also need one of the favored skills at 90 and two of the favored skills at 35. Another limitation that I'm putting on myself is that I can only have a maximum of that 35 strength and that 35 endurance that I need in order to become the Master of the Fighters Guild. So in order to help along the way, I'm going to grab the Bitter Cup early on. I want the Bitter Cup to increase my intelligence and decrease my endurance because I want to have even fewer hit points because that's funny. So that's exactly what I do. I set up to where intelligence is my highest stat, which isn't hard because it's my favorite attribute and I'm a high elf. My intelligence should be the highest attribute. But in order to make endurance my lowest attribute, it's currently tied with a couple other attributes right now. I need to make myself a drain potion and drink that before I pick up the Bitter Cup. I also need a way to get into this locked room, so I make myself a good spell for that, and I try to tank the trap. It takes me a couple tries, but I eventually figure out how to do it. Now, the next problem is this skeleton. As a high elf, and additionally being born under the sign of the apprentice, I am deathly allergic to magic. If I am touched with magic, it will hurt me gravely, if not straight out kill me. I need to figure out a way to get around that. Otherwise, that happens. So I give it a few tries before I realize, for some reason, if you stand on the ledge next to the steps, the skeleton can't actually follow you there, and you can just shoot him with ranged spell. While I do want to mainly stay with touch spells since they're melee range, and that's also kind of funny, I'm pretending like I'm a good fighter, but I'm not actually a good fighter. I will use ranged spells when it is far more beneficial for me. But with that fight done, I can get the vampiric ring to use if I need to. And the Bitter Cup is mine. That much less time to get to 100 intelligence. So the order of importance I'm putting on my stats, I want my intelligence and my willpower to max, but I also want to increase my agility because one of the Fighters Guild favored skills is block, and it's actually going to be the only skill that I can get up to level 100 without actually using it, since you can't train a skill higher than the governing attribute. I can't do that with any of the other ones because the other skills are strength and endurance based, and I can't have more than 35 of either of those. I can finally join the Fighters Guild and start my journey. I go in this order more or less when I'm getting my duties. I start with Adis, then I move on to Hrundi's duties, then Lorbamol's duties, and Perseus's duties, generally in that order. There are actually a lot of different quests that are related to the Fighters Guild. Depending on how you complete the quests, you may not do all of them before you become master of the Fighters Guild. First task is pretty simple. You just have to deal with some rats in town. All you have to do is run over to Vvardenfell in Balmora, and she'll give you a key so you can kill all of the rats that are destroying her beautiful pillows. I don't use the key and I use my unlock spell instead. Most of the spells that I'll be using in this particular playthrough are spells that you can just buy from vendors because there's nothing too difficult here. I make a few custom spells in order to do certain niche things, but we'll get into that. But the second task that Edis has for me is to enter the Shulk egg mine and find the poachers that have been taking eggs from there. Most things in this game don't resist one element or another. In this case, since these are Dunmer, they don't have a resistance to cold, but they have a very high resistance to fire. If I were fighting Nords, it's the other way around, where they have a very high resistance to frost, but not a very good resistance to fire, so I can just kind of switch between those two. The next few quests that Edis hands me are pretty self-explanatory, but I want to make a quick stop over to Pemini near Caldera. She wants to be escorted to Narmak and she'll give you the boots of blinding speed, but if you just kill her, she'll drop them. So not wearing armor, but this is a mode of transport. This is just going to save me a lot of time and effort in the long run. You'll see. You can pin the map, either the local map or the world map in this game, and then it doesn't matter so much that you're blinded. The blind still is annoying, but you can still have a decent idea of where you're going and get to places significantly faster. But the third task that Edis gives you is to clear out some Telvanni agents near the Caldera mine. I don't think they're actually Telvanni agents. I'm pretty sure they're actually members of the Thieves Guild. I think them being Telvanni agents is just a cover. I actually went and talked to the members of the Thieves Guild to see if they said anything about it, but they didn't. There's no point in not joining the Thieves Guild either, so I did join the Thieves Guild and the Mages Guild. But the other enemies, all three of the enemies in here are Dunmer. I have an area of effect frost spell that I bought in the Mages Guild, and eventually these enemies are all going to fall to the frost ball. Not the skeleton, though. The skeleton's immune to frost. But if I kill its controller, then it dies too. But that's another order done. The next order, you have to get a codebook from Satilde in the Thieves Guild, but she doesn't want to fight you for it, so you have to make her fight for it. My frenzy spell isn't working, so I have to buy a better one. This is one of those niche spells that I created. It's called Hit Me, Frenzy for 100 points. It's a guaranteed attack from an NPC, and then you can legally defend yourself against them. After collecting the book, it's off to Saran to collect some protection money. Why the Fighters Guild is having businesses pay collectors money is a bit odd, but off to Saran it is. The NPC is running a strip club called Delsa's House of Earthly Delights.
Tell me what this is about.
It takes a while, but she eventually agrees to pay the protection money that she owes to the Fighters Guild, and we get to keep half of the money that we collect. Next, there is an orc that's been squatting on a property in Balmora that has a bounty, so we just run over there and take care of that.
You seem worthy of my knowledge. You may speak.
But that is the last bounty that Edis has for us at this moment. Moving on to Hrundi in Sadrith Mora. The best missions, in my opinion, from the Fighters Guild in Morrowind are either from Hrundi or from Perseus, so I really like going through Hrundi's quests. Even though The first quest that he assigns you is technically an escort mission, but you can kind of cheese the game. What you can do is you can run through the dungeon that you're meant to escort this NPC through before you escort her through it, and only fight the boss with her present. If you kill the boss of the dungeon before she has a chance to damage it, she actually gets mad at you and Hrundi doesn't give you as good of a reward. It doesn't matter. The boss is a Daedroth. Lots of magic. It's going to be a little bit difficult. I want her to be at full resources to fight this. I want to be at full resources to fight this. So this just makes the most sense to me anyway. I also take some time to loot the place because there's some pretty valuable stuff. But after all said and done, I can unlock the doors and get ready. Lariana has some pretty cool voiced lines that are unique to her that she says on your way to the boss fight.
I can smell the stench of the Daedroth. It is here, and I will find it. The beast is near now, very near. Be on your guard.
She's pretty gung-ho about this fight, and you know what? So am I. I have an absorb spell because a lot of the time Daedra have a base reflect chance. If you hit them with a spell, there's a good chance that it's just going to bounce right back onto you. I also use poison because even though it's poorly costed, there aren't a lot of things that resist poison, so it's just kind of a safe bet to use.
Jeremy Soule is vanquished, but somehow I feel uneasy. I must investigate these ruins further. You have been a worthy companion. Farewell, my friend.
Back to Hrundi, and our next mission is to head over to a mine and rescue a healer. Relatively easy. The only enemies in here are going to be Nyx Hounds. Nyx Hounds go down pretty quickly. The hardest part of this quest is finding the place. So once the Nyx Hounds are dead, you can just talk to the healer and lead him back to the beginning of the dungeon, and the quest will complete. Making our way back to Hrundi, we actually get 2 missions at the same time. There is a Corpus Stalker in Brewen's store in Tel Mora.
How may I help you?
So once you kill the Corpus Stalker, you can continue making your way north towards Voss, and there is an outlaw by the name of Rel's Tenim that has taken up a post near Voss. Now this dungeon is very interesting because half of it is a cave and the other half of it is an ancestral tomb. Now the ancestral tomb half has a very powerful vampire named Marara. Marara has an extremely useful ring for this run, but we're going to have to figure out a way to kill her in order to get it. You can see here my magic just really isn't doing enough damage, and I am taking too much damage. So I just start over. I picked up a Summon Greater Bonewalker spell at some point. One great strategy that I decided to utilize in this run is the Greater Bonewalker spam strategy, trademark pending. Basically what you do is you block an NPC's routing by placing a Greater Bonewalker in their way, and the Greater Bonewalker will deal damage to that character's strength until they can't move. You can make this strategy even more efficient by locking a door behind you, because as far as I know, NPCs in this game have absolutely no way to unlock doors. So you just wait for a while, and unfortunately the vampire got stuck in front of the door. But like I said, this dungeon is actually 2 dungeons, so you can go around to the other entrance, and when this vampire can't move, it's much easier to fight them. This particular vampire has a reflect chance That's from the ring. It's a 25% chance to reflect the spells that you send to bounce back onto you. But as long as I am careful and I heal when I need to heal, then this should be fine. With the ring in hand, this is one of the best items I can wear in the game. Since I'm deathly allergic to magic, that's just a 1 in 4 chance to ignore spell damage. The upper side of the cave side is where Rel's Tenem makes his lair, and here's another variation of the Bone Walker. I don't remember what I called it. The Bone Walker blocker strategy. You can hit an enemy with a paralysis spell and they can't move. But while they can't move, it's a good time to just let the Bone Walker drain their strength, and you can get a couple cheap shots in as well with a touch spell or whatever. Also, after I lock this door, I realized that if this NPC gets stuck in front of the door, then it won't be as easy to get around the door as the vampire. So I opened the door prematurely, but his strength is already 0, and he's stuck in the corner. Touch spells also happen to be quite a bit cheaper than target spells in general, so this is just a pretty decent way to save on resources. But with our return to Hrundi, we get our next task, which is to deliver a load of Sujamma to a mine. There's actually a couple times you do this for the Fighters Guild where you take a shipment of alcohol and deliver it to a mine or something like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't give you a crate or something that's self-contained, and you just get the booze, and if you, I don't know, sell them before you deliver them, then that's really bad because then you have to go buy them again, and that didn't happen. No, why would that have happened? Anyway, it's time to go to Vivec and talk to Lorbamol for his initial quests. The first few quests are pretty easy. First, I need to get a Justaw feather ring. It's not very hard. You just talk to an orc and he'll just give you the ring when you ask for it. The next quest is to silence Tongue Toad. There is an Argonian in Aldrun that, again, works for the Thieves Guild. Starting to notice a pattern here. Certain members of the Fighters Guild really don't like members of the Thieves Guild, and it seems like they might be abusing their power in order to remove them. But hey, what do I care? I'm getting paid. Returning to Lorbamol, you get yet another task to kill another member of the Thieves Guild. This time it's a Khajiit that's living in Vivec. If you're just to outright attack him, there's a chance you can get expelled from the Thieves Guild, so I don't want to do that. I cast the Frenzy spell on him before I attack.
This one is no more.
Returning to Lorbamol again, we need to collect another debt. However, this person doesn't have the money. They can't pay it. They give you the location of somewhere that can have a lot of money. The best way is to just pay this debt off yourself because money is pretty easy to come by in this game. Makes it a lot faster. Returning to Lorbamol, that's it for his initial slew of duties. We can come back for another couple later, but right now we can move on to Perseus in Aldrun. Unfortunately, he doesn't have anything for anyone under swordsman, but we can go ahead and get a couple rank ups right now. And then make our way to the first mission in Voss. Once again, this is an escort mission, but you can clear out the entire area before you take the person you're meant to be escorting through in order to fight the boss at the end. And once again, you kind of want to be at full resources and have your companion be at full resources for this fight anyway. I think it just makes sense to clear out the dungeon beforehand anyway. I'm just lucky that it works that way. So this particular fight is against a necromancer. He didn't summon anything, but I positioned the person that I'm meant to be protecting between me and the necromancer because she does not immediately aggro onto them. When she gets hit by a spell, that certainly sends her off. I barely need to help for this fight, but I do anyway. Anyway, back to Perseus, and it's time to collect a bounty on Nerer Benarin in Sargon. This particular NPC is going to have one of the first super valuable items on them. This guy has an ebony cuirass, which is good and bad. Good because it's heavy, so my greater bone walker doesn't need to damage their strength as much before he stops being able to move, but it also provides a lot of protection. That can be annoying. Not from my spells, but from the greater bone walker's punches. I misfire a spell and hit the greater bone walker, so I immediately load, and I go through another couple tries before I successfully gimmick this NPC. I tried just an absorb health strategy where hopefully if they hit me, I can just heal through with the absorb health. It just doesn't seem like it's doing enough damage, so I give up after not too long into this try. This try is the best. I'm going to walk in with the Summon Greater Bone Walker spell loaded so that I have the best chance of blocking his movement. It doesn't quite work the way that I want it to, but I can just summon another one at the end of this bridge, and it will pretty effectively body block him from leaving the bridge. By the time he pushes the Bone Walker out of the way, it's already too late, and his strength is too low to be able to move. Now it's just a matter of advancing and retreating while casting my touch spells before this enemy goes down. Excellent fight. Back to Perseus for another quest. This time it's to Saran again in order to deal with some bandits nearby. You go directly to Avon Oran and he will tell you that the bandits are camped up in a cave called Sataran. None of the bandits here are particularly difficult. There's a pile of them right there. No big deal. Avos will reward you himself for taking care of this. And then you can move on to the next mission, which is to deliver another load of booze.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
And now it's time to move on to the second round of duties when you need to be a higher rank. Returning back to Adis, we find out that there is a group of orcs holed up in a Daedric ruin that have been extorting the farmers in the area for food, and, well, I guess the farmers are under the Fighters Guild protection, so we need to deal with these orcs. There's 3 orcs on the bottom level here. I figure if I can group them up tightly enough, then I can use an Area of Effect spell and deal damage to all of them at the same time in order to deal with them pretty efficiently. And that works pretty well. There's also one up top, so don't forget that one. But then it's back to Adis, and we need to deal with the Velothi gang, which is a smuggler ring near Pelagiad. Once again, there's not really anything too difficult here. And here's a level. Back to Edis, and the final task she has for us is to defeat a hunger in the Serrano tomb. I'm not really sure why this hunger has an ebony helmet. Maybe it was a piece of loot that it grabbed from the tomb, but if that's the case, shouldn't we not take it? Whatever. Hunger's dead. We can move on to Hrundi's final quests. First, we have another escort mission. This one takes place in Telicero. This Dunmer stronghold has become a 6th house base, so a lot of those enemies are just kind of a pain in the butt to kill. The Ash Slaves have Reflect, and the Ash Ghouls have just a ton of health, so we clear out the area and bring Sondale back to the beginning of the dungeon with no issue. She's happy with it. We're happy with it. We can head back to Hrundi, and take care of a goofy little guy in Telnaga. Apparently this wood elf has a bounty. This dark elf here always gets in the way, and she also has a key, so I decide to deal with this dark elf first. She decides to deal with herself, I guess, but I go get the key, and now I can fight Engare. Now I'm a little bit worried about Engare having enchanted arrows, because a lot of the time enemies with arrows do have enchanted arrows, but I can go ahead and just hit him with absorb health to recuperate any health loss that I might have. Back to Grundy, and the final mission he gives me is finding the Pudai egg mine. There are 7 golden eggs here. I don't want to show where it is because I think it's kind of fun to look for it, but in the Queen's Chamber, you find the 7 eggs of gold, and I had a hell of a time figuring out how to transport them back, but due to the magic of editing, we're just going to go right back to Grundy once I get all these eggs in my inventory. What I wound up doing was just making a spell that increased my strength so that I could carry more stuff for a short duration. Probably could have just set a mark there and then recalled. You know, sometimes hindsight is 20/20. But with that, all of Grundy's quests are done. I move on to Lorbamol's quests next. He has 2 more quests for me to do. These are optional and also very fishy. The first thing is to collect a bounty on a tax lady in Sadianin. You need to go into the Imperial Warehouse, which is normally locked, but it's nice to be back in Sadianin. And I already unlocked this with the key, but the woman upstairs apparently has a bounty on her head. You know, as long as I'm getting paid, I'm not going to ask too many questions about this. So, here we go. I'm just going to make sure she has nothing important to say, and then she's going to hit me first.
You're not even trying.
Not so tough. Back at it, and there's 1 more bounty on a judge, which is extremely suspicious, but you know what? The less questions I ask, the better, I'm pretty sure.
You're mine.
He didn't even really have spells to defend himself with. He just started throwing hands, which doesn't really work against me. With that, I can make my way to Perseus for the final quests. The first quest he's going to give me is to kill the other Guardian, as well as the current champion of the Fighters Guild. The other Guardian is Adis, and the champion of the Fighters Guild is currently Lorbamol. I was able to get up to this rank because I used the Master Block Trainer in Fort Buckmouth to get up to level 100 block, after I got my agility up to 100. Now, as soon as you walk into the Balmora Fighters Guild after receiving this quest, Edis will fight you. But that's okay, because I can walk in with a Paralyze spell rather than a Frenzy spell, and then proceed to drain all of her health until she stops moving.
You will die where you stand!
Lorbamol will similarly attack you as soon as you round the corner in the Vivek's Fighters Guild. Now, he's not wearing any armor, but he does have a Drew Club, which he probably could have had a better weapon. This seems pretty weak. But I'm not complaining.
Give up. You will die.
After removing those corrupt supporters, apparently they've been accepting bribes from Orvis Dren, but so has Sjoring, the current master of the Fighters Guild. So Perseus actually wants us to take his place. He's going to give us a key, which hopefully might help us in the fight. There's most of a full set of Orcish and glass in his quarters, but we don't need that. We're Mage. We're going to head straight over to Sjoring's quarters in the Vivek's Fighters Guild. I thought he would attack me immediately, or at least be armed and armored and ready for battle, but I try to ask him for orders. He wants me to kill all the heads of the Thieves Guild. I just think that seems superfluous now that I am poised and ready to become the master of the Fighters Guild. All I need to do is make him be not living. So he has an enchanted steel warhammer and nothing else equipped. But we're going to go ahead and steal all of our health back with Absorb. Absorb is just probably the best damaging spell in this game. I like it a lot. He has a full set of steel armor in his inventory, which is bizarre. I kind of would have thought he would have had something better, but regardless, it's back to Ald'ruhn, and we talk to Perseus, and Perseus names us Master of the Fighters Guild. Here's all my stats at the end. I was a pretty high level because I was just training in between. A lot of the enemies that you're fighting in these quests have quite a bit of loot that you can just grab, and then I convert all of that into training pretty much. But that's it. Thanks for sticking around and watching this far. If you enjoy this kind of content, please consider subscribing. I went a little bit further with this character. You'll notice that I have a lot of enchanted items on. I actually took this character all the way through to Red Mountain. I wasn't sure if I wanted to include all of that footage. I decided against it, but I had a lot of fun making the Mage run all the way through the Fighters Guild. It felt like a fun reversal of the stereotype. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I really enjoyed making this video. If you happen to catch on stream, I did the same thing in Oblivion, and that's actually going to be the next video that I put out on the channel, is doing the same thing but in Oblivion. We can kind of compare the two, see which one was more fun, see which one was easier. I think, spoiler alert, no, you know what? I'm not even going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you which one I thought was easier. You're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait and find out. But that one was fun too, because I streamed the whole thing. But that's it for this video. Once again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you feel like dropping a like, I'd appreciate. Subscribing also goes a long way, and it helps you follow along these goofy little adventures that I like to do. That's it for now. Goodbye.